Maryland 2 weeks ago for a 2.5-day seminar. Took some pictures over down there. Real nice training facility. We're actually at their R&D center, which is state of the art. Real nice machine shop, training area, and everything down there. So you can see we spent most of the day in that room, but we also went out in the shop. You can see Vic and Sam there taking the pump apart, trying to put it back together. Pretty much everything you see up here we had to take apart and put back together and understand how it works and everything. So we had various sessions. That one's up there on mixed proof valves, some details how things work. You can see that both Jerry and John are pretty interested in Jim taking this pump apart and shown there. I think it was so stressful. They're like, I can't take any more. I just can't take any more. So
it was almost craft week.
But it was so. But also we went out in the shop. We did some demos on some valves, how they work and everything. So, and you can see in the middle section there is, as we were going through different sections, whether we go through valves or pumps or everything, we took tests. And they had 3 groups of 4 of us. And we kept score down through there. Now I won't tell you who was on which group there, and you can see who won there. But it was actually really good. So it wasn't something we just went there and listened. We had to take tests at the end of it. So it's actually pretty good. So well,
who was
guys,
on your team, Jim?
Vic and Dan and Jeff from Dixon Sanitary.
The guy that did our demonstration on the quick coupling.
He didn't know anything about Sanitary, didn't want to know anything about Sanitary, but he had to be at the seminar. So.
How's Vic do on the quizzes?
Yeah, Vic's not here right now. Vic stumbled on the first one, but we made fun of him, and he did okay after that. so we were actually losing at the beginning, but we did win in the end.
They came back.
We came back and won. So we also had to, with the test, every group had to do a sales presentation in front of a customer to sell the product, and they graded us on that too. So it's pretty good training course. So we're going to break this down in a couple different categories. Each of the guys are going to take one product line, just kind of break down. We're just going to give an overview. If you have any questions, just ask us. So Bob and Sam are going to go over different check valves.
All right, well, I'll do the first 2 check valves, and Sam will get the other ones. Basically, check valves, just like even though this is sanitary, it's no different from their check valves for any other applications. It's to prevent backflow. The first one is the basic one is the spring check valve. Basically, as your media is coming through, it'll push that disc up, and material can pass through. And then as soon as there's no pressure pushing the material through, it'll come back, close it so that material cannot flow back into the system. This particular one can only be installed in a vertical position. So if you had a horizontal application, you would need to use something else, and that would be the next one. But we stock this. This one's available in 1/2 inch all the way through 4, so it can be used in a lot of different places in the system. We stock it in 1.5 inch and 2. It is available with EPDM or FKM gaskets. We stock it with the EPDM. And also, repair kits are available too. It basically will come with a new spring, a disc and gasket that's really easy to replace. All of these, you don't need any special tools. You're basically just undoing the clamp and everything comes apart. So that one, yeah, I think that's it on that one. I'll pass that one around. You can take that apart, just unscrew the clamp, and you can take that apart.
You just have to put it back in.
Yeah. The next one, it does the same thing. Obviously, the design's a little bit different, but this one is their Y ball check valve. And instead of a disc like that to create your seal, what you have inside is a ball, and that's why it's a Y ball check valve. So basically, that ball's sitting in there creating the seal, and once the material is coming through, it'll push that ball out of the way to allow the material to go through, and then once there's no pressure applied, the media going through, that ball will come back and seat itself so that material cannot flow back through. This one is available 1.5 inch through 3. we're probably going to bring this one into stock 1.5 inches and 2. We're starting to get some increased usage on this one. Big differences other than design. With that one in a 2-inch, you're looking at our cost of about $133, as opposed to this one at $244. So it is significantly more, but there are more applications. Also, one of the factors to consider would be the type of material that's going through. That one, you have to use something that doesn't have a lot of viscosity, real thin material, water, milk, juice, something like that. If you had anything that was real thick or chunks or anything like that of material into it, it would get caught up in that. This, once the ball is pushed out of the way, you have the full diameter of flow. So you don't have any resistance to your flow with this particular one.
How much pressure you need to open that spring?
0.1 psi. Doesn't take a lot. Feels like it's a lot to push.
It feels like a lot.
But
the
it-
surface area on that disc is what.
But it's not a lot of pressure. Both of these are 3A certified, which is certification for the food and beverage, the standard that they have to meet for that. And other than that, again, this one has same thing. No tools required. Take it apart and get a repair kit. It'll just come with a new ball and new seats to fix that right while it's in line. Won't pass this one around yet because Sam's going to show one of the other relief valves that can be used in conjunction with that. So, Sam.
Alright, the next check valve that I'm going to talk about is the one here that you can use in conjunction with this Y-ball check. You can reference all this in your sanitary catalog here. Just want to show this page here in regards to this because there's 3 different options available. This one here is the air blow check with your quick connect coupling or plug. You can also get this in a threaded or hose bar connection if you want to connect a hose to it. So there's 3 different options there. This one here is your only 3A certified option. So 3A is that certification that a lot of guys use in the dairy field. Generally something that you want to ask about before just quoting something, because if they do need 3A, they are going to need this option. So how is this product used? This is a good demonstration here with the Y-ball check. It's essentially used, you would connect your air to this and it would be used to blow your media through your piping to clean it out. So let's say we've got milk going through here. Your ball would be up here, your media is flowing through. When you disconnect your system, the ball is going to fall to the bottom, you're not going to have media going through. But if there's still a little bit of pressure, you could get some flow through still. So what you want to do is you connect your air blow check on top, clamp it down obviously, connect your air, and when you push that air into the line, it's going to force that ball to the back of your line here, so no media is getting through there. And it's not going to push air back through this way either. But it'll throw your air through and then down this way and force all of your media that's in this portion of the pipe down at the end of the plant out. And that way you can bring in new media, or if it's just to clean this certain section, whatever the purpose is. So that is your typical design and function for the air blow check. The next one is an air relief check, and it does pretty much what it says, is it relieves pressure from your line. Primarily used to relieve air when going into like a pumping application. So Kris will talk about centrifugal pumps here in a second, but one of the biggest enemies of a pump is air. So when air gets into the volute, it can cause cavitation, which is essentially causes like a pitting, or it gives it a rough surface. It's not good for the pump. So what you can do is you can tee off right before your media comes in, put this up top, and this works similar to your Y ball in a sense. There's a little ball inside here that the air will push up. It'll push that ball up and allow the air to relieve out. You can get a polypropylene ball or a Teflon ball depending on the media. If you have a corrosive application, you might want to go with a Teflon instead of a nylon. But other than that, that's really the only reason why you'd want something, the substitution there. So essentially your media is going to be coming through your line here, your pump's here. when that meat is coming through, if there's any air in there, the air, obviously, the gravity's going to carry it up, and it's going to come out here and relieve your air before it gets into your pump. Basically a good insurance policy, as Bob calls it, for your pumps. Always something to ask about if you're selling a pump. Hey, do you guys need any air relief checks so you can protect that pump? Also, in terms of 3A certifications, this is only 3A certified when you have this elbow here. You can also get it in a threaded vacuum, like cap connection, and that is not 3A certified because you have a threaded connection. Whenever you see threads, you know 3A certification. And the last one here is a tank relief vent. Essentially, it's for tanks to relieve your pressure or prevent vacuum. So if you have a gigantic tank and a tanker is, or the tanker would have gone by now, but if you're pumping your material from your tank into your facility, as that drains, that air that's in there is going to create a vacuum, and if you don't have some sort of pressure relief, your tank's going to cave in. Likewise, if your tank's being filled, trucks pumping in milk into this tall tank, your air displacement, as your air gets less and less, if there's nothing to relieve that pressure, you're going to blow up your tank. So a good option is a tank relief vent. This option here is your 2-inch and 3-inch PVC option. Not 3A certified, I don't believe, the PVC option. I could be wrong though. This one is all stainless and is 3A, I believe. Available from 2-inch to 4-inch. This is a 4-inch option. So that essentially is how these three options here work.
Yeah, the PVC one is significant.
And that is Dixon Sanitary check valves. Should I pass these around? Take a look at those. So be careful of the tops.
Alright, up next is sanitary pumps. There's basically two flavors. You have centrifugal and you have a positive displacement. Mostly what we're going to see would be a centrifugal pump. The differences would be what you're pumping. So higher viscosity, yogurts, ice cream, thicker creams, you would want to go at a positive displacement. When you have thin liquids like milk and water and food and beverage, you would go with the centrifugal. The main difference is the centrifugal obviously goes off of centrifugal force. You're mostly going to see centrifugal set up like this. And the impeller, your inlet always comes in the front. It hits your impeller. The impeller is always spinning counterclockwise. The wings on the impeller throw the media to the volute, which forces it up and out. Positive displacement is actually, you're actually using product to push product to push product to push product. So your product would come in here and it would be pushed around and pushed out, and then the next product that comes in and pushes it out. This is more of a gentler operation. If you have thicker viscosities, it's not going to slice and dice them so much as a centrifugal would. These are what Dixon calls the BC series. It's basically a knockoff of Alpha Laval or Triclover's old design of the C series. Most pump companies have the exact same design. Topline, Amco, Waukesha, they're all designed the same. The parts are interchangeable. The seal kits are very inexpensive. And the Dixon Sanitary book has different options for the seal kits. rebuilding them is fairly simple. You can also change the direction of your outlet anywhere you want to. Optimally, you want to be at a 45-degree angle because, like Sam said, cavitation is what causes a lot of issues. The one volute that we saw at Dixon, they actually had cavitation is like explosion of air particles, and it actually ate a hole right through the volute right there. So if you turn your volute at a 45, that air won't tend to sit there. It will go up and out of the volute. To size these, it's fairly simple. Got to know your gallons per minute, your piping size, your head pressure, and then obviously you're going to want to tell them what phase motor, 3-phase, single phase, and also how far you're going to be how far you're going to be pumping it, and what size piping. Very simple pump. The PD pump is a lot more complicated. Some of the benefits over some of the competition would be, this is the gearbox. You're going to have a motor. This is actually stub shaft coming out of the gearbox. You're going to have a motor here, and then this is called the volute end, the pump end, and you're going to have a gearbox. A lot of the manufacturers, their gearboxes are just a painted epoxy. And what happens a lot of times is they get scratched and then they start to rust. And when you're in a sanitary plant, that does not look good. So I don't know why they weren't always made stainless, I guess because of the expense. But Dixon's is always standard, a stainless steel gearbox. They also have, if you notice, the front cover is very flat. And one of the most important things in a food grade environment is you don't want any place for bacteria to start to develop. Waukesha's pump, you'll see two front cavities that are protruding, and that actually allows more room for bacteria and stuff to get in. This is completely flat. They also made the rotors fairly simple, or the seals fairly simple to replace. They give you this little tool here, and you actually just stick it in the slot and you unscrew. The rotor pops out, and the seals are right in there. You don't have to get into the oil end in the gearbox to change seals. They also, a lot of the pumps like Waukesha, I think it's the first every 300 hours or so you have to change the oil out. Dixon's, it's after 400 hours, and then it's once a year, and it's a very simple procedure to do. You don't have to get into the gearbox. One of the biggest benefits I think with Dixon's is delivery. They are at about, they have a lot in stock, and they're normally it would be a 3-week delivery, and the reason why it's even that long is because there's so many different options you can get with your motor and then also with your rotors, and sometimes they have to order in special motors depending on your application. But I know they have plenty of the base pumps in stock. 3 weeks is a very short lead time for positive displacement. Anything else?
The thing you were talking about, the Waukesha's and the greasing, the Waukesha's have Zerk fittings on here, so you have to go in there with a grease gun. It's, I think, every 250 hours. The guys have to re-grease those fittings. Here, there's no fittings to grease, nothing like that. You just change the oil like a car once a year.
There's also 6 different rotor options. These are what rotors look like in a positive displacement pump. Some of them only have 2 lobes sticking out via bi-wing. Some of them have 1. These Dixon made specifically for the winery industry. These are rubber-coated Healy coils, so it's very gentle on the grapes when they're processing the wine. I don't think anybody else makes anything like that. That's something that only Dixon has.
Dixon's the only one that makes the heel lobe like that. And the advantage of the heel lobe is with the bi-wing is you're pumping around here. Where's that angle at? As you're pumping here, let's say you're pumping grapes or something, it comes around here, pumps in here, and pushes this out. Well, now it's not pumping, right? So you're going to get a pump like that because you're having a cavity, a cavity. With the heel lobe, the heel lobes go together, and you constantly get a constant flow going through there. So it's an even flow as it pumps out of there. Now, you can't do that with everything because I can't pump grapes because these two are smashing together, tomatoes. So you're going to need a cavity in there to do that. But if you have something, you know, whether it's applesauce or something fine, you can do that. You can use a heel lobe, and Dixon's the only one that has a heel lobe design right now. So.
And you can go right on their website. They have a checklist that you can print out, and you can fill out exactly size, temperature, media, how big a piping system they have, and you can send that off to engineers. And I had one done about 4 weeks ago, and they had it back to me. I'd say in a half a day, they probably had a quote back to me, and then they got the pump to me in 3 weeks and 2 days. So my customer was real happy.
Anything up to 300 centipoise, you can use a centrifugal pump on. If you go above that, you have to use a pop displacement pump on there. These we can size, it's easy. These we send to the factory to size. These are very critical in the sizing, how much they can handle pressure. This pump's pretty forgiving. If I want to close a butterfly valve, this pump will slip into here. If I close a butterfly valve on this one, something's going to blow apart. So you have to be real careful. That's why you put a relief valve on here or something. So these are very tough to size.
On our quiz for both of those, almost all of us sized that one correctly.
None
None of us got that one right. So
It's extremely hard to. There's so many charts and graphs to try to figure out this. It's tough. So, maybe something to do. So.
Any
questions?
questions?
Would you want to say anything about what you're also planning for the future with our high efficiency?
Yeah, they are coming out with a new pump probably this summer sometime, maybe fall. Dixon Sanitary designed special high efficiency pump that'll use the same seal as this one does, but it'll have a little bit better performance than this pump does. So as soon as that comes out, we'll get you guys the literature and everything.
Alpha Laval did that about 8 years ago or 10 years ago. They came out with their LKH, and the problem with that is now you have to have a whole nother set of seals. You can't swap them out from the C series. So the Dixon new design is going to have the same seals. It'll be much easier if you have the seals inventory.
Can you honestly say, or Dixon say, that that gets done correctly, changing the oil on the pump? The customers do that? Do you think
They should do that because if it
the pump will
doesn't,
be coming back.
yeah, they'll
Well, I
do
mean,
that.
did they ever get into say, hey, the pump doesn't work now? Well, they didn't change oil
Yeah,
for
you can
3
do
years.
an oil
I mean,
analysis.
You can do an oil. We can send out
Send that
an
oil out.
oil analysis on them. Yeah. You can see,
okay.
yeah.
And they'll say, hey, you can tell this oil's,
One of the
do your
biggest
oil.
problems you see is that somebody will leave this plug cracked open a little bit and they go wash down
Pumps it out.
and water gets in there. And then they get contaminations in that oil. And then the bearings do go bad to pump. So. But, yeah.
But that's another thing that is an advantage to the Dixon is that the Waukeshaws and the other companies, they don't do oil. Like Sam said, they use grease. And Drury, mentioned it a little bit that you don't have to get back into the gearbox. The other pumps you do. When you're changing out the seals and everything, it's all part and parcel to get in there. It's a much messier and time-consuming job to change the seals in a Waukesha or some other pump. While this one, if somebody's following the directions properly, can probably get it done in a half hour. So, versus hours of trying to do it. And then it's not only that; it's also the testing of it. Did you get it tested right? Did it when you get it back together? Is it put back together right? Because we had that problem when we were putting this one back together. So all the pumps have that, but the big advantage, if you get this one put back together where it's not quite right, it's maybe another half hour out of your day, versus you already spent a half day putting your, taking apart and putting the Waukesha back together. Now you have to take another half of the day to do the same thing and hope that you get it right. So one of the biggest advantages to it, besides the availability of the price, is the time involved
Speed of service.
for maintenance. So
Yeah, we basically had, two tools. You had a little wrench, and then they give you this tool here to get the rotors off.
It's pretty easy to do.
Yeah.
One thing we'll go real quick is I don't know if everybody in the food and beverage industry, we have what's called a sanitary connection. I don't know if everybody's familiar with that. But like we thread pipes together, we weld pipes together. Anytime there's a little crack, like a thread or something like that, bacteria can get down in that little crack, and you can't have bacteria off. You don't want bacteria in your milk and everything. So years ago, they came out with what's called a tri-clamp fitting. And you're going to get a gasket, and you're going to see a little groove in here that a gasket goes in here, and a special gasket, which is a tri-clamp gasket. And this gasket goes all the way to the center of that tubing, that sanitary tubing there. So that'll make a seal. There's no gap there. There's no little crevices there. It makes a completely tight seal, and it's complete. No bacteria will get in there. So that's a tri-clamp fitting. So you're going to see that on all of our fittings, where this would just clamp onto there, and then they have what's called a tri-clamp clamp that goes around there, and that clamps that on. So that's how that gets a complete sanitary in there. So you see that they have. They also make like a bevel seat that's tri-clamp. They make some John Perry fittings. They make some eye-line. It's just kind of like just a little different design than this is. So
How often do those seals have to be changed?
you really don't have to take these out and change those at all unless you overheat them, or if you're taking them apart and you smash one, or then you should replace them. Some people will change them all the time. These seals can be used 50 times as long as you're not. Now, if you get this off center there and you smash that down, then you got to replace that seal. So, and these gaskets come in EPDM, Buna, Teflon, Viton, all different types. These are black. They make a white Buna. Do anybody know why they make a white Buna? If they make a white Buna, let's just say it black, and maybe a little piece of gasket does flake off there and goes in your applesauce. Do you want to see a black chunk? So you go with white, you probably won't see a white chunk in there. That's why they use white. Okay.
I'm going to be looking for any kind of chunk in my
So
applesauce.
you won't see that white, but you will see a little black speck in there. That's honestly why you use white Buna. So. Okay. Johnny, you're up next, right?
Yep.
I'm not walking around the other room determined to the table or something.
Okay,
What if that falls down? It makes me nervous.
It's not going anywhere.
Jim's toes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll start out on ball valves. Dixon Sanitary basically has the standard 3-piece ball valve. You can either get it with the tri-clamp connections or butt weld. What you need with Dixon, what they did when they designed their ball valve, I'll call it a little hinge. They added to the body that basically if you need to repair it, you take the 3 bolts out, you can loosen this one, and it acts out like a hinge. So you're not pulling the whole thing out. And I double checked myself. One of the manufacturers, they do not offer it. And as you know, you're out in a plant, maintenance guy goes to repair this ball valve. He takes the bolts out, more than likely he'll have a bucket, put in that, take it back to the bench. You have all these internal parts that can drop out, misplaced, etc. He puts the valve back and it still leaks. So the hinge factor is really nice. The other one too, with the sanitary ball valve, you can get them encapsulated. And this was probably about the first time I ever seen one that showed the encapsulation that goes completely around the ball. You can get it encapsulated or just with the standard seats. That will prevent any media from getting back past the seat into the body, and then you can have nasty stuff growing inside the ball valve. With theirs, they also have their mounting pads. You can put a electric or a pneumatic actuator on it, rack and pinion, basically standard solenoid valves. You can have a limit switch then also on the top of it, or a positioner. This limit switch has 2 cams on the inside. It will show somebody walking down through the tank's 20 foot tall if that valve is open or closed on the beacon. That'd be one nice thing. You can get them double acting, that it takes air to open, air to close, or air to open spring. That can all be changed around. Then also with their ball valves, they'll have the standard port, a 3-way, and a 4-way. When we were there, we asked about the flow patterns of a 3-way valve or a 4-way valve. Basically, the easiest thing to do when you're in, ask them to draw a 3-way, the letter T, put arrow marks of how they want the flow to go, send that to Dixon so you get the correct one. Then on the top, positioners that you can either use electric or pneumatic, and basically what that will do is modulate the ball for more fine flow. Dixon also offers the V-port, in which is a plate that goes around the ball that can modulate or do the flow more precise as you would want. In the ball valves, you have the choice of 5 different seat materials. Butterfly valves, you have 3 selections of the seat. The most common is the trigger in which we stock. Multi positions, you can lock it in. It does have a locking pad. They do have they have the pull and the knob that you can open and close, put it in, tighten it into that position to control your flow. Butterfly valves will have 3 different types of seats. They can also be actuated also pneumatically. This would be a pneumatic actuator on the top of it. And again, dry clamp or butt weld. All 3/16 stainless. Then they also have, I call it like their mini, but it's the 5102 series butterfly valve. This is basically, I only ran into it one time, basically on a control panel where it's close to, different fittings, etc. Basically all you have to do is take this apart, put your furrows on the inside, and you have a manual or controlled valve you can add on to it. Any questions?
Why would you want a butterfly valve versus a ball valve?
Butterfly valve, basically the media, one is definitely the cost. The one disadvantage of a butterfly valve is you always have that disc in the flow of material. Various times a little chunk, something else in there will get wrapped around the disc and you do not have a positive close. Versus a ball valve, full port, full flow.
So basically, when you're using a ball valve, you're going to be more times than not be wanting a full flow as opposed to maybe one option that he showed where it had a V port in it. Like he said, the butterfly valve is going to be less expensive, but it's going to be easier to control flow with it. Ball valves, essentially, when you are normally going to be full open or full closed unless you have that V port in it. Butterfly valves, you can put in a certain position to help put that flow back. So what he was saying as far as being a disadvantage could be an advantage if flow is more important to them, to be saying, I want to decrease the flow, as opposed to a ball valve always being full open or full closed. So it's a disadvantage, but it is also an advantage, with the design. So
Another thing is pressure ratings. The butterfly valves are lower pressure rated than your ball valves. So if you have a high pressure hitting that disc, they actually showed us a disc that was completely like
the stem.
the stem. It was the shaft was straight, but it was bent in. So you have too high pressure hitting that disc, it can cause.
So
Yeah.
where you're going to run into that problem is if somebody's saying, well, I have a low cost application, but I have it's high pressure. Well, you can't do both. You can't say, okay, I want this low cost butterfly valve in this high pressure situation. It's just one of the things where it's a trade off, one or the other, you know. So.
And the ball valves that we stock, they are the encapsulated version. We stock in with just the Teflon seats, and we have that 1.5 and 2.
Okay, now if you really want to sell valves, you want to sell seat valves. Okay, this is a top end valve here, and to get a seat valve is because there's a seat. Okay, and when this is an actuated valve, and when this goes down, it's going to push this seat down into the body and close that off. Now, seat valves can have multiple ports. If you look in the book, you can see you can have 2 ports, 3 ports, 4 ports, 5 ports, whatever number of ports on these valves. And it's not uncommon to see, if you look, a whole manifold of seat valves all together in one. Okay. Now, the one disadvantage of the seat valve is pressure. They're not for high pressure because the actuator is going to be the only thing that holds the pressure back on these. Okay. Also, they're not very good for high viscous products or chunky products. They're more for a liquid. You can run some different corn oils or sugars through that and everything. But if you look at it, when the seat's in here, you can kind of see this is going to come off. It's hard to see in there. You're not going to get a full flow like you would through a ball valve. So you don't want to put heavy, thick product through here. If you look at this valve here is set up, it actually has 3 ports on it here. So one seat is sealing down in there, and the other seat's sealing in the top here. See, one's going to go on the bottom. So we could have an inlet here controlling this port. It could shut this off and come to both these ports then too. That's how a seat valve works. Now, these all come apart. You can take this stem nut off here. You can replace the seats on here. You can replace the stem on here. The actuator is completely replaceable. You can take this actuator apart, put a new seal kit in the actuator. You can take this actuator, say I have a normally closed valve and want a normally open valve. You can take this apart, put the spring on the other side of the piston, and then you can have an opposite of normally closed or normally open valve. So you'll see a lot of these. These come in a lot of different configurations. With a normal seat valve, just normal application compared to alpha valve, these are about half the cost of the alpha valve ones. Now this is somewhat of a low-end seat valve. They have what's called an aseptic seat valve that is very clean. These are all 3A approved and good for milk, liquids, anything like that. Let's say we're doing coffee creamers, have to be aseptic. They make what's called an aseptic valve. They're going to have a bellows over here so you don't see the stem on here. It's completely clean. Aseptic would be where you're making like coffee creamers, where you don't refrigerate it after you make it. There can't be any bacteria at all in there. So you'll see the aseptic valve there. They've also come out with what's called a mix-proof valve. I'm not going to get into that right now. That's a very high-end valve. It is a seat valve. It's a very high-end valve. With that valve, you have 2 stems in here. It's actually one stem, but they slide inside each other. So I can run a product through this side of the valve and CIP the other side of the valve while I'm still running, so you don't have any downtime. Very expensive valves. We don't see a lot of that in our market here right now, but it's something that Dixon does offer. So. But if you hear seat valve, we get any parts for them, whatever you need. But again, we don't want to give these away. We can make some money on these valves. So, one other thing we do have in front of us here is this is an inline strainer. Yeah. And if you're trying to strain, let's say we're running apple cider or something, we want to filter out some of that product there, look clean. Yes, a little clean. So this would be put right in your pipeline with both those connections on there. You put that right in your pipeline, and inside here is a spring-loaded filler. Now that's got some pretty big holes in there. All we're filtering out there is some big things that shouldn't be in there, stones or bolts or whatever. You can get a screen that goes over top of this and have fine media on there, and you'll see different options if you look in the book on the filters here. These are completely interchangeable with alpha to valve. If you need a new backup tube, if you need another screen, whatever you need, you can order it right from Dixon instead of alpha to valve. These are completely interchangeable with alpha to valve. Questions on seat valves?
just to kind of explain, when you were he was saying about CIP. In case you didn't know, that means clean in place. There's that, and then there's what's the other acronym? COP.
Clean out please.
Yeah, clean out of place. So with the sanitary items that are out there, you'll have customers that they'll keep everything together, and that's going to be your clean in place when they're running the cleaning solution through the piping and everything. Clean out of place means exactly the opposite, so they're actually taking things apart. So if something's has a rating for CIP, it means, okay, you can keep this attached, you can run the cleaner through it, but you might have, in certain instances, valves or what have you that are only rated for COP. That means you're going to have to take that apart when it comes time to clean it. So
The advantage of CIP is you don't have to take it apart, it saves you time. You know, if I can sell you a pump that's CIP, and you have a pump that's clean out of place, now you don't take that pump apart. So sometimes it can take you a half hour to take that pump apart, and now if I sell you one CIP, you don't have to take that pump apart, you just take the half hour. You can just flush CIP solution through that pump and it'll clean it.
How often do they have to do that?
What's that?
Clean it. Clean
Between
the
every
line.
shift.
escape.
In between every shift, when they shut down, if they ever shut down the line or they change product, they have to do that.
Now, if they don't shut down the line, it can just go indefinitely?
No, there's a certain time limit, I'm not sure what that is. Yeah.
Just click on that one thing.
And what he was talking about, that mix-proof valve was, if you run orange juice up top and you run milk down below, you don't want those two to mix. It'll close the one off, so your milk's still flowing, but your orange juice isn't flowing anymore. Now you can CIP at the same time while your milk's still flowing right below it. It's
It's pretty good. They had never there to show us that, but it
I
was.
never knew what a mixed proof valve was for.
Well, we were kind of,
So
we
two
fully didn't
partial
understand it
mix.
until we got to see a demo of it, so.
Well, it makes sense now that
Yeah.
you said that.
Okay, I'm going to go over a little bit of the Dixon website. Dixon has their, what we deal with is the Dixon valve side and then the Dixon sanitary side. First thing I want to show you is that if you do have a login, you can switch between one or the other. So right now we're on the Dixon valve side. Before I make the switch, I want to just run one thing by you so that you kind of see that there is a difference in why you want to switch.
Also, the top distributor in Dixon Sanitary on the East Coast.
Yeah, well, and that's something to really be proud of in and of itself. I was surprised when I went to the seminar that we were as big a a purchaser from them as we are. Well, yeah, I mean they do.
And they'll get bigger this year.
They really do. So, okay, so just take my word for it. When they get that straightened out, the pricing is different. One side versus the other. So make sure if you're doing anything with sanitary that you do have the sanitary side up. When you're dealing with a customer, a lot of times they're going to be wanting spec sheets, maybe even videos, on how to put something together. So when you're just looking up a part and you get to this page here, you can scroll down and you can see different things that are available. If you go to the catalog page, you can see what's in the Dixon catalog, and that in itself will give some dimensional information if it's just a simple fitting, valves, what have you. It's okay to send them, the list pricing, because usually our pricing is so much better even to the customer than what is shown on the listing that they're going to be fine with it. So don't stress about, hey, I don't want to let them see the pricing. They do have one that just says dimensional specs there. If you didn't want to send just the catalog page, you can actually see it based on that particular size. They do have some other resources available, such as their YouTube videos. What's that?
Do butterfly valve.
Okay. I could just do butterfly valve,
Yeah.
I think. So let's just say that here you don't know what the part number is, but you know that they want a butterfly valve. You type that in, you should be able to get a list of items that they have. Going down through there, you can see they even stock the industrial side. But for our purposes, we are looking for the sanitary side. Let's look at that mini butterfly valve that John had talked about before. They were saying that this valve, when they were explaining to us, they kind of think of it as a afterthought valve. You know, because it's so small, somebody said, oh, I need to put a shut-off valve in this position, but they're very limited in space. That's the valve to kind of go to. So if we go look at a 2-inch size there, you see down below they got butterfly valve checklist and the catalog page again. The checklist for valves, you can get blank checklists under their resources, but this will tell you specifically for this particular brand of valve, or close to it. You can see there's only 3 different, styles there. If you want clamp or weld, if you want it actuated, what have you there. They have 182 YouTube videos, though, when it comes down to you're dealing with a maintenance guy, and he's like, well, how do I put this valve, or how do I put this pump together? So under their video section, you can click there. If it was a particular item that had a video to it, it would be listed down there close to where the catalog pages are and everything. So on this, you can see there's a lot. Trying to find one that maybe will pertain to something that we went over.
Air relief check. There, DC.
There wasn't air relief back on that?
There's a squeeze pump.
Which are, right here?
Yeah.
Okay. See if this guy's monitoring again.
Probably is. It's
A tale of 2 clamps.
Oh, this guy's exciting.
First, the single pin clamp. Notice it takes a minimum of 2 hands to use this clamp. Then our patented squeeze clamp.
Some people
So if
don't
you have-
have
With
to.
one
If you have
hand,
3 hands, you're in really good shape.
hang the clamp on the work. Then, with one hand, complete the connection.
Yeah, sure.
Unless you have 3 hands, this is your best choice.
They do, the videos do anything from putting pump seals in to showing what you do. They do an excellent job at videos. And again, a lot of them, you can go, when you look at that product, you can go right into video and see that. There's one you're replacing a seal. You're replacing a seal. That's a pretty long video though.
Yeah.
But, and it's not just on Dixon Sanitary products. This works with all Dixon products. So you're looking at a coupling or another type of valve or whatever. Now, Sanitary does have the most videos out there now.
Seal. If the pump is small enough, tip it up on its end for easier disassembly. Loosen the guard bolt and nylock nut. Remove the bolt and nut. Remove the guard. Using a modified socket, loosen the wing nuts and remove the clamp assembly. If the volute does not lift off freely, use a screwdriver and twist between the volute and the adapter head carefully and remove the volute. Using a small screwdriver, center the impeller retainer in the stub shaft. Slide the impeller off the stub shaft. Using a small screwdriver, remove the retainer from the hole in the stub shaft. The 216 to 328 pumps utilize adapter pins. Rotate the back plate to disengage the pins and remove the plate. The 114 has no adapter pins and the back plate will lift off freely. Remove the DG back plate assembly. Carefully remove the carbon seal. Remove the cup. Remove the spring. And remove the O-ring. Using a hex key, loosen the set screws on the drive collar. Lift the drive collar off the stub shaft. Using 2 screwdrivers or a screwdriver and a pry bar, lift the deflector off of the stub shaft.
You might run across
Oh,
where
wow,
if somebody's a
that
maintenance
man.
guy and he has one of those pumps, he's more than likely going to know how to replace the seals. But there again, you might have somebody new that just came in place and he was never trained. having to go to the website is probably your best bet. You trying to watch the video and then telling him what to do is probably going to be a lesser option that you want to stay away from. The website is also great for if you want to place orders on the website. Now, there again, you got to think of this as, okay, you're in a real emergency situation. Customer's looking for something tomorrow. Bob, he places orders every day, Bob and Doug. So, it's not, if you have a couple days on it, I would just let it go to buy. But you can place the order. You could go to proceed to checkout. When you proceed to checkout, it's going to take you through about three more pages where you're going to have to enter an address. If you've done it before, it will have addresses saved already in there. If you're doing it for the first time, you can save the address for future use. If you have time, fool around with it because you're not going to make an error. It'll ask you to the very end, are you sure you want to place this order? And then, if you click yes, then you placed an order. One of the other things that you can do is check open order status. You can view your open orders, which is kind of nice from the standpoint of you don't necessarily need to know what the PO number is at the time, but you can see what orders are, open at that time. You can also go to closed orders to see some orders that, have shipped if you're looking for tracking information. So if you do know the PO number, you can scroll down through, look for it, find your tracking, and then from here, you could even click on it and go right to UPS and find out where is it. Looks like Devin signed for it. And that's whether you're on the Dixon Sanitary side or the Dixon valve side. Let's see, anything else I'm forgetting?
Just go in and play. If you have any questions, ask Doug. He's
Yeah.
Does each individual have a login or?
Yes.
If not, I can have that set up.